Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. Today we are finishing up our conversation on the Poppy War as we blaze through the Poppy Wars by R.F. Kuang. But before we get into it, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So I feel like I haven't been watching too much. I'm caught up on What We Do in the Shadows.
I'm not. No spoilers.
I won't give any spoilers. I did, however, rewatch the Jackie Daytona.
Laura's favorite episode
That is my
ever.
favorite episode of possibly TV in general. That is like the funniest thing to me, and that actor is just amazing. I love him so much. Laszlo is hilarious.
I saw a TikTok recently where someone in the background in their house has one of the Nadia pictures of her in her like white flowing thing, and I've never been like, oh my God, I want that so fast. Like I was like, I want that. That's so amazing that you, because like outside of context, it looks like a very like old school painting. But if you know, you're just like, oh, that's what they
you hear the song in the back. Yeah. You're dead.
Stay dead and buried and gone.
Too funny. I think about that sometimes when I see like different things on the internet, or like even just things that people will post like of their decor in their homes, and sometimes people have like pop culture type things like that in their home, and I'm like, okay, I would have never thought to incorporate that into your home. And I know like people have pictures of Kramer and stuff like that, those famous ones that they get, and I'm always like, where would you put that in your home? But then some people like put it up and I'm like, oh my gosh, you made this look really good, and it doesn't look just like a tacky poster of Kramer up on the wall.
Exactly.
So it's amazing what people can do, and I appreciate the creativity when it comes to decorating your home and adding in things like decor from TV shows and stuff like that to actually make it part of your personality in your home. That's so cool.
My best friend from law school is a 40-year-old man with a wife and children. He has certain posters up that I'm like, how did he get his wife's approval for this? But it works. Like it's very strange when there's like nice like fan art or like album covers just kind of in your house. I approve. It's weird, but I want the Nadia picture.
That would be amazing. Like, we could use a Nadia doll.
Oh my God, I would love that so much. That's so creepy. But like, I actually like, I'm terrified of ghosts and things that are haunted, but I would definitely take that one. Oh gosh, that Nadia doll is so funny.
It cracks me up. So many things about that show.
The episode when she feels unloved and she like tries to run away.
So great. So great.
I love it so much. Okay. Well, I'm glad you're caught up with it. I'm trying to watch it with my old roommate, and she and I are notoriously bad at coordinating things. We're going to try to teleparty it, but we may just end up being like, we have to both watch it by Wednesday.
I mean, then you can still talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. And my brother-in-law, one of my brothers-in-law, our entire relationship is him texting me TV shows I should watch. He is like 10 out of 10 great at it. Like he and I both love Letterkenny. He told me to watch The Detectorists. So good. It's about metal detector people who want to find treasure. And I love that show so much. It's so good. But he randomly texted me and he's like, What We Do in the Shadows is back on. And I'm like, yes, I'm aware.
I know. Don't have to alert me.
Honestly, I appreciate that in our relationship, that he just tells me TV shows I should watch, and I'm like, I trust you. You're thinking about me. So,
yeah, that's great.
Yeah, so I knew exactly when What We Do in the Shadows came back on because he told me. He told me when season 2 came out, and I didn't realize it. I was like, oh, thank you. So yeah, but good on you. What are you reading?
So, well, I also watch Muppets Treasure Island. You know, I am a Muppets fan.
Laura's a huge
all
Muppets
of
fan.
Their work is 5 stars, golden. Tim Curry, amazing, hot, love. Yeah. And then I just finished up yesterday Rick Riordan's Percy Jackson and the Olympians, Sea of Monsters, because I want to get caught up on the newest Olympian podcast. I read the first book, The Lightning Thief, last year, and then I was able to listen to his podcast, Mike Schubert's podcast, up until they finished The Lightning Thief, and now I'm like, oh crap, I haven't read Sea of Monsters, so I need to read that and then read Titan's Curse. So I gotta get all through my Percy Jackson here.
So I think I've only read half of the first Percy Jackson just because I needed to like return it to the library in college when I had like borrowed it. But I do want to read them before the Disney Plus.
Well, and that's the other thing drops. Too. I think that was the goal for Mike's podcast, The Newest Olympian. I'm going to shout him out again. It's a great podcast. I think that was the goal for him. He's been going through different children's book series and in depth. And now he's into the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series. But I think his goal was also to have read through the books by the time that the TV show comes out. And then he can kind of go into the TV show. So it looks like they're casting it really well. I mean, Jason Mantzoukas is in it, so he will be a perfect Dionysus. So
I got my roommate once a t-shirt that said my sexual orientation is Jason Mantzoukas screaming at anything. I mean, and it like to this day is just a 10 out of 10 gift from me, and accurate, because I would marry Jason Mantzoukas. I don't understand how he's still single.
So you know that Brooklyn Nine-Nine episode where it's like Thanksgiving and he's just revealed to Holt where he's like, I got fired from the force, and he's like, have you ever thought about doing teaching? And Jason Mantzoukas like comes up with this whole scene. He plays out this whole scene in his head of like, oh yeah, well you're a little piece of shit, and says this to the kid or whatever, and he's like, oh, Principal so-and-so, I didn't see you over there. Oh, Johnny is your son? Then he's like, yeah, that's not gonna work out. And then he's like, Holt's like, well, what if you became a private eye? And it's funny because it's like the way that Holt reacts to this, he's kind of like, okay, well, that was weird, but I'll just keep offering suggestions. And he's like, what if you became a private eye? And so then he does another like scene like this where he acts all of this out, and then he's like, and you frame me for the murder? And then he's like, oh, I think that could work. I think that could work.
I can see it. Yeah.
It's just fabulous to me the way that he's able to do that, and I'm like, he will be perfect in this Percy Jackson TV show as Mr. D, because that's how I picture Mr. D being. It's just like totally random like tangents like that, where he's just like so involved in his own thoughts and his own thought process that he can like act out an entire scene of how something's going to happen.
Well, I haven't watched this. I just love Jason Mantzoukas and all of his career. Amazing. I'm obsessed with him. He's so amazing. But they're like the Pam and Tommy Hulu series.
Okay.
I haven't watched any of it, but I do know about this, where they're like, from Tommy's like autobiography, he does a scene about like meeting Pam from the perspective of his penis. And so they put that in the show, but Jason Mantzoukas played his penis.
Incredible voice actor for Big Mouth.
Exactly. He was just Tommy's penis.
Amazing.
Tommy.
What a credit.
I love that like he has the most random career, and
it seems like he's so willing to just like jump on board with anything and just be like, sure, yeah. Totally voice a penis. Like, okay.
He talks about how like he only gets cast as dirtbags, and he's like, oh, I am always a dirtbag. It's always that. But in real life, he's just so nice and just like a man who's allergic to eggs.
Did you ever see the episode of Nailed It that he was on?
Obviously.
It was so funny to me too, where they were like, they called like this, or no, they hit that buzzer, and then him and Nicole just freak out, and they're supposed to be asking for help. Like, people cannot even hear what he is saying to try and help them, because Nicole and Jason are literally trashing the kitchen. And the way that Jason at the beginning is like, there better not be any eggs in that.
Right? Better not be any eggs. I will die. He once talked about like getting high for the first time, and he like couldn't eat anything with like the baked goods because it all had eggs in it. So he had to just like put butter on a Ritz cracker, like weed butter. And he's like, and so I was sitting there like munch, 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 munch. And then it didn't work. So I had a second one, and I was like, munch, 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 munch. And then I had a third one. And then all of a sudden I was really, really high. And I was just having a conversation with someone where I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm talking to you. I'm so high right now. And he was like, and that was all I was saying. I wasn't saying anything terrible. I just kept telling her that I was really, really high.
Oh my gosh.
But oh God, I love Jason Mantzoukas.
He's amazing. I can't wait to see him in that show. Megan Mullally is also going to be in the show. I love her.
Love her.
They're bringing in just perfect amount of chaos, and I am thrilled for it. I think Rick Riordan has been very supportive of the direction that they're taking the series, and I think he's also just like very aware of his own flaws that he had in writing this book series, because reading it, I'm like, okay, well, that's not really something that I would word that way now, but I'm like, okay, this was a long time ago, remember that, Laura? And but for the most part, they're good middle grade books, and I think it's heartening to know that the author is aware of his flaws and his past misgivings, and is like, you know what, no, we're gonna change that going forward. I'm gonna try to improve upon myself, and we're going to move on from that, and I'm going to acknowledge that was bad, but we're going to keep moving forward and learning. So good on him, and I'm excited to read more of those books, because I had this was just like a sluggish bad week for me, and that coming home and reading that book was just like very nice to do. It was just like a nice way to kind of end the day and just read about Percy Jackson. So thank you, Rick Riordan, I think is Riordan. So Hannah, what have you been reading and watching?
Let me think. Sorry. I watched all of Severance on Apple TV.
Okay.
It's starring Adam Scott.
Ooh, I love Adam Scott.
I love Adam Scott too. My biggest thing is just his name on it is Mark Scott. And I'm like, it takes zero time to not give him the same last name, especially when it's two white person names.
Yeah.
Scott. It's Adam or Mark. That
or just call him Adam Scott.
Yeah. But it is on Apple TV, and it is about people who decide they want separate lives from their home life and their work life. So they have something implanted in their head that severs them. And so their work life only exists in the workspace. They have no idea what their outside life looks like or who they are outside of work. And
while they're working.
And so for 8 hours a day, they're almost a different person, but they are also the same person.
They're because completely dedicated to their work then.
Yeah, they're completely dedicated to their work. They're friends at work, but they don't know each other outside of this space. So the work is, and they don't really know exactly what they're doing, but they know they have this job. Their Audi wanted them to do this because they're called innies and outies, innie while at work, out. And it always turns on when they're in the elevator. And so they have to stagger people as they're coming into work and outside of work. So you never know who you're working with, and you just have this specific life. And so we follow Mark Scott, who you find out lost his wife in a car accident a couple of years ago. So he severed himself to get some peace. Even if he didn't know he was at peace, he felt like part of him could be at peace during the workday and not have to suffer through the grief he was suffering through. But then his best friend at work quit, and there's a huge mystery going on what's going on. There's a ton of ethical things about if you get abused at work, you have no idea because you have no perspective for that. And then there's also the ethics of this person only exists at work. They don't have any outside life. So is that ethical to only have this? And there's definitely some stuff going on with government stuff and legislation and all these things about the ethical things of severing your own self off of it and making someone experience something that didn't necessarily agree to this because they do not understand what happened to them outside of that world. It is fascinating.
That sounds fascinating.
It's really wild. And the show, already it has so many ethical things. And then it takes a couple of wild turns where I'm like, what? Did that just happen? And it's insane. So Mark is not the best character, but watching Adam Scott do a deeper, darker role is really interesting. And his brother-in-law is kind of this I'll give one tiny spoiler, sorry, but his brother-in-law is this like guru type guy who's like, we just need to be like emotionally ourselves. And he like rolls his eyes at him. But through some unforeseen events, his innie finds the book while at work and starts reading it. And he's like, this is so elucidating. And like becomes obsessed with it. So like there are so many layers to this about like some things happening at once and like watching, because you're watching the whole thing take place, but you know that there's missing information on both sides of things. And so it's fascinating to see. And like, I very much enjoy it. And there's like romance in it between like two people, and it's great and it's cute. And like, I was not expecting it in some places. So I I understand not everyone has Apple TV. It's usually one of the ones that most people don't have. But if you have like a free trial, you know, watch it, because I really liked it. I thought it was really good. Apparently it's up for a bunch of Emmys, and I didn't know that. I just like heard him talking about it on some kind of like on Wait, Don't Tell Me, the podcast. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll check that out. I have like Apple TV, and I like binged it all. I stayed up late. I stayed up until like 1 a.m. Oh, the first couple episodes I watched like once a week, and I do like doing that. But the last couple episodes, I had my like first 3-day weekend, and I just stayed up until 1 a.m. watching it. I was like, this is so good. So I hope people watch it, because I want to talk to someone about it. I haven't been able to talk to anyone who's seen it.
Honestly, that concept is like fascinating to me, because I used to think about this more when I worked at my previous jobs, because now I do not work. I work in a situation where I'm self-employed. So previously, when I worked at businesses where there were other employees and everything, I often like had that kind of mindset where it was like, these are my work friends, but they were often much older than me, and we didn't really get together outside of work ever. And it was a situation where I was often like, oh, you know, I'm not going to reveal too much about like my personal life to these people. You kind of kept things separate from work and home. And it's fascinating to me that they like took that concept and ran with it and made it into such a bigger thing. So that's really cool.
Right. I know. I find it fascinating. And then for reading, I continue on with my books that Laura has recommended to me, and I never got around to reading journey. I read Anxious People by Frederick Bachman, Lord and Savior for Laura.
Our Lord and Savior, Frederick Bachman.
It was delightful. It made me cry. There was a phrase that reminded me of my parents that made me sob openly, but it was just really good. I really enjoyed that book. I didn't see some of the turns
that
coming.
One gets a lot more hate than it deserves, honestly. Like, I think that one is one that people are expecting more of A Man Called Ove out of all of his books.
Yeah.
And I think he's really good at writing different styles of books. And this was one that was very different. And I think this one didn't, I mean, it was still very popular. I'm not going to say that it didn't get a lot of acclaim, but I think it got more of a mixed reaction from people who are like, oh, I love A Man Called Ove. So I am glad that you liked it, because I think that it gets not enough credit from some of the people that were like, this is not a good book, because I'm like, I think you're missing something about it, because it's quote unquote special. I don't know.
And I also think that there's something about like, because he is Swedish, right?
Yes,
he's Swedish. And I think sometimes with that, like there's a certain humor that comes with like Swedish literature, because I've read a couple different Swedish authors now, and there's a certain bizarre humor that comes out of those books where like coincidence is a lot more discussed, or like weird things happen and weird people get put together, you know, and it's always just a strange little outcome that you don't expect. And I do think that that was what this book was, where it's just like, hey, it's a bunch of like random strangers just being human during a very weird moment in time.
I also just love the interconnectedness of it all, where it's like, you don't think about, you know, just people you pass on the street, how you could be connected to them at any given time.
Right. And I love how like bizarre it all came to be. And it's so interesting to think about and interesting to understand. And then like, there is neurodivergence in this book. That is like very humanly taken care of. There is so much going on and so many layers that I just found so beautiful. and I really liked it. I thought it was good. I didn't see some of the turns, but I was okay with it. Like I felt like you could have seen every single turn coming or none of them coming based on the day you were reading it. And I read it in like 24 hours. It was not like
I did too. That was a fast read for me. I remember.
It's a really fast read and it's really cute. I just like it a lot. I think it was really good. And so many funny moments. Like just I enjoyed it a lot. So I read that. And then I also read Laura Interior Chinatown.
One of my all-time faves. Maybe I should mute this so I or turn off my sound, because if you don't, Laura, I gave it 5 stars. So upset.
I gave it 5 stars. I don't think you couldn't give this book 5 stars. Like
this is like one of my all-time favorite books. Hannah, when you said you cried in Anxious People, I'm like, I stopped reading Interior Chinatown at one point because I just felt so connected to it. I can't tell you the emotions that book gave me.
That's amazing. Well, Interior Chinatown is by Charles Yu, and it's like a Hollywood satire about a Chinese man trying to make it in media and like at this very bizarre procedural cop show that his entire life revolves around.
And the goal is to become Kung Fu guy.
Yes, because that is like the
pinnacle of what you could possibly be as a generic Asian man.
Right. And it is so good. Like, it's just so good. It's so interesting. I've never read a book like this. Like,
it's so creative, just the way that it's written.
Right. And it's written like it's like kind of written like it's a screenplay.
Which he wrote screenplays.
Okay, that makes sense.
Previously.
And I just don't understand. Like, it only has a 4 on Goodreads, and I don't understand that. Like, it's so unique and so innovative, and I just really liked it. What made you cry about it, Laura? I'm fascinated.
I think a lot of it was going farther into the book, like when you're talking about his relationship with his daughter. I think that was for me and this is over a year now since I've read the book, so it's hard for me to recall, but I remember literally like reading certain parts of this book and sobbing and just feeling so like connected to the character. And I can't explain why, because we have nothing in common, but I think that's a good thing about books, that you can have nothing in common with a character and still feel so connected to them and feel for them. But that character just I loved it. And he's divorced and has a child with another person, and I think a lot of it that was for me emotional was that type of relationship and learning more about that.
Right. And Willis is like, he's a little bit of a flawed character throughout the book. Like, he's not
for
perfect.
Sure. He's not perfect.
And he's so interesting. And I loved reading about like his parents' relationship and how they came together and like grew apart and all this stuff. And it was a really fascinating book. Laura's gotten a couple of people to read it off talking about it on the podcast. And I concur with her. I think everyone should read this book. Like, she even said she didn't pick it specifically for her birthday month, even though I know how much she loved it, because she was like, no, I think you should actually just read this. Like, I'm not going to force you to read this book. I think you should read it. And so I picked it up based on that. And yeah, she's right. I own the book. I'm really glad. I accidentally left it in a coffee shop yesterday.
Such a beautiful book too, that like even the cover of it, I'm every now and then I just like pick it up and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so pretty.
It is a very pretty book. I left it in a coffee shop yesterday because my ADHD brain is on overdrive right now. And I went back and the barista was like, I wrote the name down. Is it good? And I was like, yeah, you should read it.
It's really good.
I enjoyed that very much. And then I read Our Wives Under the Sea, which I posted a review about on Monday. So everyone should read that. I'm talking from the future because I haven't written it yet, but it will be written for publishing on Monday. So just a little bit of the brass tacks.
We won't talk about it now, but go to the blog.
Yeah, go to the blog. Certain things Hannah writes on the blog and we do not talk about it here, so you have to go see it online.
Purposely directing you there. Hannah's been doing a lot of work for that, so please check it out. Like, Sarah Destin Summer was on there. That was a really good post.
I hope
I get all the email notifications when there's new posts, and that one was a fun one.
It was very
I really appreciated that, because I was like reading some of them and I'm like, I probably wouldn't like that one, and then I get a little farther, I'm like, oh, I can't believe that one was ranked so low. I probably would like that.
Which one did you think I ranked too low?
I can't remember which one it was. Let me pull this up because I found it. You're not going to be surprised at all which one it was. So I couldn't remember the name, but I was like, it has to do with like an affair that was like a public affair.
Oh.
You're not going to be surprised about that at all because you're like, oh yeah, you love the drama of that. But it's that summer where her dad had a public affair with a really young woman and her mother found out about it.
Yeah, that one is very dramatic. I think it just got rated low because it was like one of her shortest ones.
Mm-hmm.
And it was more about like everyone above it I liked better, but I really liked that one. So highly recommend. It was just some of it is a little strange. And it was one of her earliest ones. So it's a lot like you can feel the age of it as well. Mm-hmm. And which a lot of the ones where you can feel the age, I usually rank lower.
Sure.
Because it's more about sense. Like, how would teenagers fare in reading these today? Do I think a teenager should pick up that summer? Maybe, but they may not love it as much as some of the other ones. Sure. But
I just remember reading through this and I was like, well, that one actually sounds kind of interesting to me. It's that low.
Laura, the audiobooks are great on these, so you should check them out.
Maybe I should.
Yeah, and listen to that summer Sarah Dessen.
Maybe I'll do a Sarah Dessen September.
Oh my gosh, yes, but make it in August. Bechtel cast that stuff.
Yeah, there we go.
Sarah Dessen September in August. That's awesome. Well, yeah, everyone should go over to our blog because Hannah's been working on that again.
Yeah.
And I'm putting a couple of like the books I got off of NetGalley up there because I think that those should be highlighted as like newer books that we're reading right now. And Our Wives Under the Sea was super good, so definitely read the review.
Yeah, I'm new to NetGalley. Can you answer some questions about it for me? So, how many books do you typically request?
Okay, well, so anyone can request as many books as you want. Mm-hmm. It's just that NetGalley, if you think about it, and I'm not sure how much, because like there are certain people out there who will say it doesn't actually matter. No one's looking at it. But NetGalley pushes the point that like they want you to be at like an 80% review rate. And a lot of times that's like, if you're being looked at by publishers, I'm guessing they're kind of looking at like how many followers you have, where you're going to be reviewing, if you're going to review on a lot of different places, and then like probably like how many like books has she actually reviewed. So I usually like to keep my books at like a specific variation of like how many books do I have right now to review versus like how many do I want to request. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times I'll request like 3 to 4 at a time and then try to keep it limited because I have over requested before.
Sure.
And NetGalley, for people who don't know, if you're interested, like you can request ebooks before they get published. And for an honest review, they will give you an ebook, an unproofed copy of it to read on your Kindle, or whatever device you so choose.
Whatever device, yeah.
So I think it's just like, it depends kind of, because my rate right now is like at an 83%. And I've reviewed like 23 books on NetGalley. So if that tells you how many I'm sitting on. And I just made some new requests because I had a couple of backlisted ones, like Our Wives Under the Sea has already came out in earlier July. I need to read the latest Blake Crouch one that I just didn't get to just because of moving and it, like doing this podcast and everything. Sure. And then I just started The Final Strife which recently came out. But I think a lot of times they're more interested, like Laura, I know you got Babel pretty early on, and I'm guessing like being able to say like, oh, I run a podcast like that.
That was the first one I had ever received on there, but I have like only requested 4 books.
You can request like a ton if you want to. So
I'm just like curious about it because I don't necessarily fully understand how it works. And I don't want to be overly requesting things either because I'm like, how good will I be about staying on top of it with all the other books I'll be bringing in? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think a big thing is like, how many do you feel comfortable with that your anxiety isn't going to get to, you know?
Right.
Because I think when I first started out, I tried to keep it relatively limited. I give a lot of my NetGalley ones 3 stars. Hannah thinks everything is okay. Oh yeah. I've reviewed 30 of NetGalley books. And then I have, let's see, I have 6 sitting on my shelf.
So I've reviewed 2. I currently have 2 that I have to read. And then I have 1 hanging out in the can I get this?
Yeah. So usually what I do is I pick them up and then I try to read them based on their published date. And a lot of times for me, at least, and we can cut this out of the podcast if it's not helpful, but
I think it's interesting.
I try to layer things on when books come out, because like if I know a ton are coming out in July, I'll try to like keep it to 3 or 4. And then I'll be like, okay, in August, I only want 2. In September, I only want 2. In October, I only want 2. So sometimes I look at it based on publishing dates so that I'm not overwhelming myself and I can read things a little bit more layered. But there are 2 that have been out for a while that I just haven't reviewed yet because I just haven't gotten around to them.
Sure. That's fair.
So, but if a book has already been published and then you read it, you can still review it on NetGalley and it does count towards your percentage. So I always recommend continuing, like,
just don't give up on it, even though it's like already been released.
Yes, exactly. Cause you're still posting it on all those things. So you are like holding up your end of the bargain. Yeah.
Okay.
To push the book. So I don't think they're going to mind if it's like, oh, you read it a little bit later. You just didn't buy it. It's, a lot of people are questioning, like, I know I've had a couple friends be like, is NetGalley like worth it? I think you can get into the toxic side of NetGalley. Like you can get into the toxic side of content creation where it's always like, have to read the best book, have to do this, have to do that. And I don't think it's always about that. A lot of times I use it as more to get books that I think look interesting. Like I got The Final Strife because I was like, ooh, a Black author fantasy, like that is great to like look into. And then Blake Crouch is one of the more hyped ones, but I love Blake Crouch and my roommate loved Blake Crouch. And so I think sometimes you can get different books that you weren't always, going to look at, or something that it's a good way to look up books that could interest you. So don't let it get too into the hype. But
I'm trying not to like go overboard with the requests, but it is kind of fun to just like scope through. And like one of the genres that I selected that I liked was science and nature. So I do kind of like trying to figure out like, oh, if I want to get another nonfic, will I pick one of these? Because they're very different types of books. So
I will say that I requested one that Laura wants us to cover for the podcast later on. So,
and I have that one right now, and
I know you do.
It's so good. That's another one that I was like so shocked that I got it right away. I was like,
well, maybe a bonus
One's for Me by Alice Cochran. So Alison Cochran, not Alice.
Pick
Alison
that
Cochran.
Up. I was told no by a couple of the romance ones that I picked. And then I realized I didn't have romance as one of my interested genres. So I was like,
I don't know if I do.
No wonder they said no to me. But a couple of my romance, I usually do like the more famous ones though. So I'm like, it's not shocking that they said no.
No, I don't have that listed, but I have literary fiction and women's fiction listed. So maybe that's it. I don't know. It
depends. But yeah, I have a couple for August, October, and November. So we'll see if I get some of these. But
also everyone just pre-order Kiss Her Once for Me, because I'm just telling you, the review is to come, but it is good.
Laura, maybe you can write it for our blog.
Yeah, I will do that.
Awesome.
Christmas in July.
Christmas in July. Portman July.
Christmas in July. The review will be released in August. And that is not a joke. We're laughing, but it's not a joke.
It is very Bechtelcast of us to not really care about the month we're saying.
Christmas in July. It might be released in December.
When Laura feels like it. And we may be doing a bonus episode on it. So if anyone's interested in reading that book, let us know. Because
if anyone wants to read it with us,
come on the pod. But with that said, Laura, should we get into it?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about characters in the Poppy War.
Hannah, who's your favorite character?
I think it's
so far.
It depends, because I think Alton is probably like my favorite character to have followed, but I have like the most anxiety and attachment to Katai. Like
those are my favorite characters also.
Of course they are. Yeah. Glad we're on the same page. I can feel like something bad's gonna happen with Katai, and I think like he gives me the most anxiety because I'm like, I don't know where this character's gonna go, and I foresee bad things, but I love him so much. Like, what am I gonna do when that happens?
I'm so surprised with the direction that Katai went, because at the start I was like, oh, this is kind of just gonna be a throwaway character that's gonna die, and it did not go that direction at all. And she even like reincorporated Katai back into the story, and he becomes kind of an integral part of being Rin's conscience, more or less, for the book.
But it is super interesting because like Katai is someone who, yes, he has her conscience, but you can also see where he may have his limits because he was raised in a very sheltered way where he like only sees like he was born
very
into richness,
rich upbringing. It just raised through like this strategic lifestyle to groom him to be a warlord. Eventually he's going to be a strategist for the warlord.
And so like he even has some problematic stances that like he becomes hypocritical about, because like at the beginning he's like, well, these aren't people, these aren't, and then at the end when Rin takes like, the stances she makes, he's like, you murdered people. And it's almost like this like double standard he has in his mind where he holds Rin up on this pedestal of like, she is, but
you're supposed to consider everyone.
But you're supposed to be this perfect like bastion of everything, and you weren't for me. And now I look at you as lesser, like you're lesser in my mind. You're not the same person. You're not who I thought you were. And that's a complicated way to react to someone who's been through a lot of trauma, who had to undergo so much. Like it's a lack of empathy to why she would have reacted this way. And yes, it happened in the moment, so he could walk away from this and understand. But I can see where his logic is faulty, and he may become a character who is an antagonist in this series because he thinks he's doing the right thing. And I think that's why I have the most trepidation when it comes to Katai, because I don't know where he's going. And I honestly trust Kuang to surprise me. So it's interesting. And I foresee him being an antagonist. I could be wrong, but that's just the flavor I get based on his relationship with Rin, that they are these deep friends. And
I think there's such a connectedness between the two characters that we like the most. I think there's such a connectedness between them and Rin that it's really beautiful, actually, the way that Kuang can connect characters in the way that she does. And I think with Katai and Rin, it's not necessarily like a yin and yang situation, but close, where it's like they balance each other out a lot, and they often can agree with each other and be of a similar mindset, but at the same time, they've had such different experiences that bring them to where they are, that the way that they get to that place of agreement is a very different journey. And it's hard for each of them to kind of see that journey that the other one has to take to get there.
It's so true, because I often think, like, we've both read Babel now. Like, I do think that there are undertones of like Rin and Katai with some of the characters in that book. And I think Katai comes from the perspective of like, not to, but in our 2020 terminology, he's almost like an ally, where he is not subject to the same treatment as Rin, but he is aware of it and he wants to support her. But there are limits to, like you said, like sometimes you can't understand the other journey the other person is going on. And he has limits to his allyship that he needs to unpack. And I think that that's what we kind of see throughout the book, of like him trying to support Rin in different ways, but not always understanding. And he gets there sometimes. Unfortunately, like again, with Neja, our
Stupid
problematic fave.
Stupid Neja.
Where he's like, I'm okay if Neja dies. He's a terrible person. And she's like, no, we're at war. And so later on, he's like, you seem to have a connection to Neja, so I will respect that, even if I don't understand it. And it's like, that's great. That's what we need from Katai. But there is a certain thing of like, does his allyship have its limits? And I'm interested to see if that happens, because he does have a lot to unlearn and unpack when it comes to Rin, because he like held her up on this pedestal, and you can't have that when you're being an ally. You have to understand the humanity of people.
Did you think that there was going to be more of a romantic aspect to their relationship than there has so far turned out to be?
So again, I think
because my first read through of this, I was really expecting this to be a situation where it was she's in love with Neja, And then Katai's like, but I love you. Why do you ignore me? Type situation. It did not become that.
I was kind of hoping that Kuang, like, again, I trust Kuang a little bit more than sometimes I should, because there is definitely a romance brimming between Rin and Neja and gross vomit. But Katai, I was hoping she wouldn't have that happen because I think everyone is kind of over the best friend pining trope.
Sure.
And so I was hoping that just wouldn't happen. And I'm like, it could go.
I'm not saying it would have been good, but I was predicting it was going to happen.
Sometimes I just
the first time.
Sometimes I just have no predictions. And with their relationship, I was like, whatever you're giving. I had a lot of trepidation for Katai doing something bad, and I still do. But I didn't have any like, is this going to be a romance? Because I was like, it could honestly go either way. It's whatever the author wants. I don't foresee either way. And so I was happy that it's mostly just familial and friendship so far. It could change. Do you
think Katai is the character that we are supposed to, as readers, feel the most connected with? Or do you think it's Rin?
I think it's Rin.
And see, I find that fascinating because I feel like Rin is the hardest to connect with of any of the characters, honestly.
I only think it's Rin because I think
because she's the main character, or
no, because Kuang wrote this when she was younger, and I think sometimes an author does self-insert character when they're this young.
Oh, definitely.
And Rin kind of screams of that, of like, you're so special, you're so different. And I think like she wrote this at such a young age that those, like, even if you don't want to put that into your book, sometimes it just happens where you were like, this character is so smart. And it's like wish fulfillment almost, where it's like you're going through
where it's like, I haven't been noticed all my life, and now I'm finally in a place where people notice me and know that I'm amazing.
Yes. And I'm not saying Kuang did that, but I'm saying like Rin has certain flavors of that to her sometimes. That I think we could have criticism over. I think Kuang is a great writer, but I do think Rin is the one that we spend the most time with. And Katai is almost, he's brought in a little bit too often, like, and brought out of the story too much to be the character we're supposed to feel the most for. He seems more like the consciousness to bring in, like you were talking about, to like keep Rin on her path and like bring her back down. Kind of like Zhang, where they're both the characters who just come in and they're the angels on her shoulder being like, you shouldn't be doing this. You need to remember that humanity
kind of a Jiminy
exists.
Cricket type character.
Yeah. And that's more what I get from Katai. Not that like you're supposed to love him the most. I think that he's easiest to love because he's not doing anything bad yet. So we're pretty much just watching him be a supportive friend to Rin throughout an entire book. But I don't necessarily think that's interesting enough that we're supposed to love him the most. You know, I think
I wouldn't say love him the most, but feel like that's the character we're supposed to be like, oh yeah, I feel a lot of the same things as this character. You know what I mean? Where it's more of a situation where you're involved in the story, but you're not like the main character. Because I would never do that. You know, we're not supposed to do things the way that Rin does. We're supposed to be like Katai and question these things and still be unpacking and learning. You know what I mean? So I think that's why I kind of felt that maybe Katai was written as the character for readers to kind of put themselves into that character, that we're supposed to be like, oh, you know, maybe you should be like Katai and not always like Rin, you know what I mean? That there's, I think that definite flaws to that main character energy that Rin has, where it's like, I'm amazing and no one's ever noticed before, and I'm ugly but not really. And
maybe this is just our psyches coming out, where like Hannah has also always famously said, I have main character energy, and you usually like the like secondary character.
I always feel connected to that outside character. I cannot the one that's not the main character of the story, but the one that's like over to the side, like Katai, that I'm like, I think you're supposed to be connected to this one. You're supposed to like notice like, okay, you know, that's not always the direction we want to go. And but I'm also thinking too far into this for sure.
No, I actually like this because I also think like you make a good point for why I feel the most trepidation with Katai, because I think maybe he is supposed to be that character for people. I just, because of the Poppy War and what I've heard about this book, I just have huge sense of foreboding with that, where I'm like, this isn't the end of his journey. So I feel weird connecting to him on like a conscious level because I don't trust him. Like, I just don't trust that he's a pact
early on in a series, you can't trust any characters and like immediately be on board with everything they're doing. Right. You know what I mean? Especially like the Wheel of Time. Like, I used to love Perrin, and that was a major flop.
Oopsies.
Like, past Laura, like a year ago at this time, I was like, woohoo, Perrin!
He's so
great. Haven't seen him for a book, but I still like him.
Yeah.
No, terrible call.
He's terrible judgment. He's the worst.
So I think early on in a series, it's often too soon to be like, okay, I think this is my favorite character, and I have all these hopes and dreams for this character, because past experience has shown me that doesn't always work out.
Yeah, and I feel like it's not going to with Katai.
I also really enjoy when that happens, though, when I do like a character and then the author is like, no, they suck.
What did you think about Jiang?
I really love Jiang.
Me too. I find him fascinating.
He is fascinating, and the whole concept of him not remembering his involvement with the Empress and how he came to be a teacher at the school, and how he to me is more so a Jiminy Cricket type character for Finn, because he's the one that's trying to be like, no, you don't want to do that, you don't want to do that. But all the times when he offers Rin opportunities to take a step back and be that person that does the good thing, which is extremely hard to do, and Rin breaks his heart, my gut just drops every single time. It doesn't even happen that many times, but it happens a few times, like when she doesn't want to be one of his mentees, when she says she wants to go into strategy with Master Urja, and my heart drops, like, oh, no, you have to go with him, he helped you all these times. Like, no, he's just kind of the character that always is kind of doing the good thing, whether it seems like a good thing in the moment or not, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense.
His approach often is to not be involved, to take a step back and be like, in the grand scheme of things, not being involved is going to be the best way to go. And I think that that's a really unique character to have.
I think so too, but I also enjoy that, like, Kuang almost doesn't let him off the hook for that.
No,
one second, there's going to be a plane coming to get me
right by your window.
Well, I am like on the third floor, and
Hannah lives in an airport.
No, it's the Air and Water show this weekend. So it's been very loud here a lot. But I don't think Kuang lets him off the hook very often. Like, she kind of points out,
she's honestly hardest on this character.
Yes, where it's like he gets to have a sense of like, I am better for removing myself from the situation, but you're also removing yourself from all the pain and suffering that will happen because of your choice. And I think that that is a huge part of the ending of this book, where like Rin is talking to the god, and he's like, you humans like to pretend that things are out of your hands, but you make choices and things happen as a result of those choices. And I think Jiang, it's easy to be like, oh, isn't he so great? Isn't he so wonderful? But he is causing pain by his choice.
His actions. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, I'm so sorry, it's so loud.
I can't hear it.
Oh, good. Okay, only me. So I just find that really interesting, that like it could be so easy to make him like the pacifist, nothing bad can happen. But much like the Tinkers in the Wheel of Time, there is a loss and suffering that happens when you decide you can't do something a certain way because you don't agree with the way to get there. And like, unfortunately, it would be nice if everything was peaceful, but it's not. And he has the power to sometimes stop pain, but he chooses not to. And through that, you are choosing that some people will have pain. And so I think he is a very deep character. And I think
for sure.
And then you find out he's the gatekeeper, which is like the one of the most non-secrets of reveals ever. I was like, yeah obviously, like there's never going to be a moment, but I also don't think you're I think it's interesting because like I think the reader is supposed to know that, but it's interesting because like none of the other characters could have ever called that because they barely believe in the gatekeeper. Like it's this
right.
like
There's this sense of separation from their not religion necessarily, but their spirituality
and their history, because like a huge history is like there was the emperor, there was the snake, the viperess, and there was the gatekeeper. And like through history, like these people have been more like reduced to just like chess pieces. Yeah, legend, or like people in a war who weren't actually that powerful. It's like what's been pushed on them in the after effect. And so of course they're not going to think he's the gatekeeper because they don't really necessarily believe in their lore. Yeah, to believe in that, you would have had to believe that he had been around for like so long. And even though you get flavors of that, it's the whole like Rin doesn't believe in telling Katai what's going on because she doesn't think he'd believe her. So
there's also just such a degree of discrediting that happens to Jiang's character where no one takes him seriously at Synagard. They all, for the most part, treat him like he's an idiot. Like nothing he says is of any value. Nobody knows why he's there. They don't want to like consider that, like all of our teachers, all of these masters are masters for a reason. There's very little support for that character while he is at Synagard when he's first introduced.
Well, and that's like the whole point of lore is like there's a lack of respect for history and the lore and everything else, because and with that lack of respect comes like Rin is a better fighter because she has learned to respect where things came from, whereas everyone else is supposed to just be taught these warlike movements. She has that
background.
Yeah. And like, because they're all supposed to be fighting towards this war, they're only taught like the power moves. They're only taught this. And like, because of that, they lose some of the inherent power that they should have if they were just learning things the correct way or learning about them outside this context. But I also think like Jiang is not perfect because like he said no to Alton and he maybe could have been an intervening factor, but he's also like putting these children up to a very specific like weight system. And he found Alton wanting because like Alton was addicted to drugs and Alton had anger inside of him due to his trauma. But instead of trying to sit with him in that trauma,
instead of saying, there's these extenuating circumstances that maybe I could try with this kid rather than be like, okay, he's a lost cause, I'm not even going to try.
He just waves his hands of it. And so that I think he's a very interesting character because like he is walking around without an inherent knowledge. He is like lacking of something that finally gets opened up to him, but he is kind of a menace in this book. Like he's just like upsetting food. He's not teaching children. Like he sees all the issues in here and he doesn't try anymore. And
so in a way, his lack of involvement is more of a problem than anything because he has this knowledge. So why aren't you getting involved in trying to change things if you know that there's issues?
Like he just wants to critique everyone else and he doesn't want to participate. And I think that is a huge problem in this character where like,
oh, for sure.
He's talking about like, well, Jun is like terrible and he's not teaching you guys the right mechanisms and he's not teaching you to respect it. But
then when people show up to his class, he's not there.
And he's like, well, I've tried and it just doesn't work. And it's like, okay, but you haven't tried every single time. You've only tried like until you decided it wasn't worth your time. And then you decided you just get to do whatever you want until someone comes along that you find worthy, like Rin, and then you'll participate. But it's only on your terms. It's never on her terms. And again, it's the whole like position-based thing. Your position is you want someone to be perfect, but your interest is like making someone perfect, So there are huge issues with Jiang that like I found all over this. So but very interesting character. Should we discuss Neja next?
I was gonna see if you want to talk about like the psych.
Okay, yeah, let's talk
because there's several members of the psych, and I don't know if all of them are worth devoting a ton of time talking about. I mean, we have like Ramza, who is a child.
Ramza's so awesome though. Like I love that Ramza character so much. I'm so glad he's there. He makes me sad.
Weapons expert. He's a fun character.
Yeah,
he brings a lot of fun to the book when so many things are heavy, and I think that's necessary to have a character that does that. We get some snarkiness and fun from Jiang, but it's nice to have Ramza when we're moving into the second part of the book, and especially into all the war, to have a character that's like, I'm light and fun, and I'm stealing stuff from other divisions, and don't understand why we can't all share because we're all on the same side.
Right. Well, and I think Realms is interesting because, again, it goes back to the like, he hasn't done anything wrong and he hasn't had the opportunity yet. Mm-hmm. Like, he is a child. So, whereas Young, like, when we look at him, we're like, there's so many criticisms because you're sitting back. Ramza doesn't have that option. Like, he's brand new. So, I think it's so easy to love him and think he's amazing because it is watching, like,
the innocence of a child, honestly.
Yeah. During a war. And that is something to think about where like Ramza is at least getting support from all these other like side characters who like want to keep some of him safe. And so that is something that like Rin didn't get growing up. Like she got like Auntie Feng like saying, hey, just get him addicted to opium and that's how you survive.
Right.
And so there is something interesting to see like a young child kind of like Rin who's like thrown into a not great situation, but the support of other people who accept him as like a found family. And I do enjoy that.
Yeah. And then you have Suni and Baji who are kind of lovable characters, but are slowly losing themselves to their gods and honestly are kind of just used as weapons a lot of the time in this conveniently where it's like we need somebody to go in and just smash stuff up, get in their Hulk, and they kind of do it.
But I also think that they're a little bit different because they're so kind when they're not like being taken over by their gods, and you get to see through them like Alton's fight to keep them human.
Sure.
And to recognize that they're more than their hulking godlike figures. Yes. Like he's going to use them because it's war and it's necessary. But when he wants to comfort them, he gives them actual comfort. Like he comes to them and he's trying to see them as people and trying to like keep them grounded. And so like, yes, there are also huge issues with that where it's like, well, if you know these gods are killing them, like, why are you still using them? And why are you still using them as a Hulk? But there is something beautiful about like Alton's use of them and trying to like keep them grounded and trying where like people were like, these people should have been mirrored a while ago. And Alton's like, no, because I can stop this. I can control it.
Right.
And it's out of like love kind of, because he doesn't want to keep losing people. But like, it is complicated. You know, it's so much about this book is complicated.
Right. There's also Enki, who is like the medical liaison person who doesn't really necessarily have any psych type powers, but is very well equipped in his own field. I don't have a lot to say about that character.
Me neither. There's nothing to say about him. He has opium.
Unigen is the one that is able to shapeshift and becomes a fox most of the time. Not a lot to say about that character.
Nope.
Is it what's the one that becomes that's in the water form most of the time?
I forget his name.
They often have him just in a barrel. I want to well, it is. I'm just
I just love
they carry him around in a barrel.
I just love that it's Aracha. Yeah. I just like that, like, I don't know, they carry him around in a barrel.
It's what happens. There's not a lot to say about that character except Rin being like, why is this always like this? And then I don't remember, does Aracha even do very much when it comes to...
He's the one who got all the boats into the one area during their siege.
Okay, so like one thing that is notable.
He's pretty much like, it feels like he's like the Deus Machina of like, look what the gods can do. We have a man in a bucket, and yet people still don't think gods exist in this. Like, we are carrying around man in bucket, and you guys are still like, there's something.
He prefers to be in a water form.
Like,
that's weird. We can't figure these people out. Like,
I wonder what's going on over there. There's a man in a bucket. What do you think is going on? Like, I don't know.
And then there's the twins.
I feel like
Shagan.
Kara and Shagan are the ones you could talk the most about. I feel like they're going to become better characters in the next book. Like they feel very...
This was very much an introduction to these characters, I think.
Yes. And Kara is interesting because she seems to be the one who like she's almost the least like thanked character, even though she holds a lot together if you're actually like...
Sure.
She's connected to
There's
Shagan.
A lot of responsibility on her shoulders, honestly. And when Shagan's gone, she has to be that connection piece for the psych to be like, okay, Shagan's doing this. Shagan is okay. I can feel Shagan right now.
Well, like he's the most powerful shaman to exist. I mean, he says he is himself. We have to trust him at this point, I guess.
Sure. I mean, besides the gatekeeper.
Yes, besides the gatekeeper, he is the most powerful shaman ever. And like she is his connection. So she probably like has some attachment to that power and like feels something for him. And she like, if he gets hurt, she gets hurt. So there is that fear coming from her where he has to like go off on all these adventures by himself and he is alone very much at the time. But she probably has to like feel that connection and feel concerned for him at all times because there's like a physical manifestation if something happens to him.
What's going to happen to you as well? You know what I mean?
And so there is almost like, because her brother is so powerful, she has to be put into danger. And like psychologically, how messed up is that in your head? Where like your brother gets to choose to do these dangerous missions. He gets to choose his limits and you have to deal with the repercussions. I think that that's a really fascinating thing that like, I hope Kuang delves into the psychology of that because I've read a couple of other books where that's happened and I find it very interesting.
Yeah. The whole twins thing is really cool.
Yeah. So I'm interested to see where that goes. And I think Kara is like one of the more grounded characters. Like she seems to know what's going on and she kind of accepts things as they are. And she's kind of like talking to Rin all the time and being like, you're kind of being judgmental. You do not understand. You're walking into this. Like it's we're already our own.
She's definitely a character that kind of sees it how it is. And is like, look, you're calling this all wrong.
Yeah. You do not understand.
You are seeing just a speck of sand on the beach.
And you think that speck of sand is the most important piece of sand ever. And it's just not because there's an entire beach out there and they're all important. And so I think I'm most interested in Kara because she does seem to be like the most like, she seems to be a very specific pawn that I'm interested to see how she's used.
Sure.
So, and then Shagan, it just doesn't make sense to me yet. Like, I can't wait to see.
I think like Shagan is a fascinating character though.
Yeah,
there's really so many aspects of Shagan that I'm just like, I can't figure you out, but I like you and I want to know more.
Like I find him very interesting. I can't wait to see where he goes. I don't understand his hatred of Rin other than like she did come in.
See, that to me is one of the areas where I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Their relationship where they're like at odds with each other. And I don't know if it's supposed to be we're fighting over Alton situation. That's the only thing that I can make sense of, but it still doesn't even make sense to me. And that's like the number one thing that I'm like, I don't like that Kuang because they're on the same side. There's no reason for them to be at odds with each other the way that they are. And
I agree.
It feels off and forced.
It does feel a little bit forced. It feels like that's like the least understood part of this novel is like the Shagan Rin relationship. I think Shagan makes sense in like he was supposed to be the head of all this group and then he just keeps watching these like Spearleys come in and
like take over his role.
Like they're most useful because they can fight. And I think during wartime, that's really hard to like take in where you might need someone who can like fight as the leader because that's what's needed at that time.
It's also just such a slap in the face when it's like, I'm a very capable person who knows about all of these different things that no one can even begin to fathom. And I'm being told that I am not worthy of this.
Just not, yeah, I think that's very fascinating to watch happen to someone. Like what kind of, he is a victim of what is happening around him almost, where it's like, well, we're at war, so we only trust wartime people. And you seem like your stuff is way more philosophical. Well, it gets back to like Alton saying Jiang is useless because he's a philosopher and he is a teacher. He is not a warrior. And there is a certain belief system in this book that like the people of this world believe that warriors are inherently more important than philosophical or like people asking the big questions. And like, I also think that there's something to be said about like, he's the most powerful, but Rin at some point is like, your power is useless because you only understand things looking backwards, not forwards. And that's
like, how can we use that?
Yeah, there's no use for you here. That's why you're not the leader. And that is difficult to hear when you're like, but I'm the most powerful person in the room. And you're telling me I'm useless because it happens to not go with what you guys find to be powerful. I think I understand his frustration.
Because it doesn't coincide with their idea of what's useful or what's important.
So I understand his frustration with people like Rin, where it's just, but I wish he had that same frustration with Alton, where it's like, oh no, they beat each other up, so now he respects Alton. And it's like, that's not great.
No, they're in a relationship. That's why he respects Alton.
Yeah, because he and Alton are in love, maybe. And like
they definitely had sex at one point off screen. And because Rin's like, I hear noises in there. It sounds like they're fighting. Like, you idiot. They're having sex.
I actually forgot about that scene, so I'm glad you brought it up. But like, yeah, those two were in a romantic relationship. She just didn't understand because Alton's her brother, and brothers can't have sex, right? That's how that works.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was very much in love with Alton. That's why he respected him. I could see where he like, I think it'll be better in the next book, hopefully, where like he and Rin are at odds, and you find out like he had respect for Alton because they loved each other and he wanted to be with him. And then Rin comes in and he's like, well, that I only respected Alton because of that specific reason. I don't trust you. Like you're nothing to me. And I think that would make sense, but it didn't play out as well on the page that it could. I think
if their relationship was more at odds when Rin is kind of declared like the new leader of the psych after Alton is gone, would make much more sense. But this tension right away is hard to follow.
Right. I agree. Should we do... Oh, okay. So we've talked about all the psych. Do we want to do Neja now, or
do we want to do like some of the masters too?
Oh, you want to do the math? Okay. Yeah.
I mean, how in depth do we want to go on some of these? I mean, there's Master Urja and there's Jung. Jung's terrible.
We can kind of, Jun's terrible. He's just the big bad that everyone can hate. And then Urja is just like kind man who has to die off screen to show you the horrors of war. Like, I feel like those two are very
like people that we respect and do things that are good have to die.
I do find it fascinating that like Kuang decided to kill Urja off screen. Yeah, like, because it kind of shows how war is sometimes a slap in the face like that, where it's like he suffered horribly. You have to find out about it afterwards, and you just have to deal with that. And I think,
and then there's other characters that you have to deal with the horrible things that happen to them right in front of you, like Venka, like, well, and we don't even get to see that, luckily, but like hearing about it is just as horrifying. Hearing and seeing her,
because she is like, she just isn't who she used to be anymore. And she's
been quote unquote broken.
Yeah. And she wants like Rin to take them down, and you can understand that. And I think like it's interesting because a huge part of the themes of this book is like, what is humanity? And it's very easy when you're on one side of the war to see the other people as monsters and not understand, like, I wonder if in a couple books we find out that people on this side were doing the same to women on the other side, you know, and it does show the horrors of war in a very specific way. And I feel bad for Venka because like, this also sounds bad, but like Venka was not prepared for the atrocities of war.
No,
she was taught how
she was often kind of coddled through her upbringing, where it was like, oh, don't hit her, she's the girl. And that's how let her win because she's the girl.
And that was how Rin beat her, because
she kind of expected that.
Yeah. Well, and it leads you back to like these.
And that's not to say that she wasn't trying to get out of a terrible situation and avoid trauma. That's not it at all.
No, it's more like Venka is an interesting character because people pulled punches her entire life. Venka is a character who just like, because people pulled punches and because she was born into something, she was treated like being a leader was going to be enough to be a warrior. And sometimes when you are a warrior or a soldier, bad things happen that are out of your control. And she did not have any sense of perspective of what could happen. Where like Rin is someone we see fighting and down in the trenches a lot. So when she sees something bad happen, like, it is still traumatizing and we still sit with her in that trauma, but there is a level of understanding of like, this is the way the world works, so I'm going to respond directly to it, where Venka was probably not like appropriately taught to do something like that. And I do find that fascinating to see like a certain character who is able to be broken, obviously through like a lot of trauma that like happens. But also I think she would have been broken in other ways if it had just been like the atrocities of war and her having to deal with that. Because there is a certain amount of removal if you are at this military college where they're like, well, you're more important because we're teaching you how to be more important. You can lose soldiers, but these people are like, you're important. So it's interesting.
I think one of the aspects of this book that I find fascinating is the portrayal of women in it, because there are very few women characters. We get Venka, we get Auntie Feng, we get Rin, we get the Empress.
And then there was another girl who was
she went into like the medical.
Yes. And she was in love with one of the people who dies early on, but they're not as,
But it's interesting to me how the women characters that we get are portrayed, because they're very strong characters, but they all have very interesting dynamics between them and other characters, and their them by themselves are very interesting as well.
Right. I agree. I think that I really think that the women in this, like, because there are so few of them, they kind of have a very unique depthness to them, because when you're sitting with one,
they're very strong characters. I mean, even Auntie Feng, we don't get to sit with her a lot, but she really shapes a lot of the ways that Rin feels throughout the book about things. And Rin reflects on being with her, growing up with her as not necessarily a mother, but a guardian,
right?
And how she looked at the world, and how that kind of shapes the way that Rin's like, I don't think I want to do something like that. Or Auntie Feng would say to just do this, and she's like, I guess that's probably not what I would do. But
right. Well, and I think Auntie Feng, it would be very easy to make her like just so villainous, like evil stepmother. But there is a certain humanity that Kuang has with her, where she's like, she sits Rin down and she's like, listen, here's how you survive. I was
going to say her standpoint is more of a survival.
And she's like, I'm marrying you off. I can't keep feeding you. Like we do not have the money. We do not have the time. We were like, we had to take in an orphan, and like now but I'm setting you up to be successful. Like I'm setting you up with a much older man who's not going to have the same stamina as a younger man, who's not going to expect a lot from you, who's really rich. So like, this is the best we're going to do.
Get him high and you'll be fine.
And you'll be fine. And you'll just like get him a child and then get him married off to someone else. So it's someone else's business. And then you run the household. Like I'm putting you in such a power, like setting skill where like that is survival for a lot of like women sometimes in books like this, or like, and Rin doesn't want that. And Rin fights to get out of it. But I don't think Auntie Feng is like evil for this perception. No. I think she's just very human, and she's trying to survive, and she is a survivor. And I also think it's interesting that like there is a certain callousness to her, but like you get it too, where it's like,
I think it's more of a realness, honestly, where it's like, she's aware of the situation that she's in, and she's like, this is the best I can do, and I'm trying.
Right. Well, and that's like Rin threatens to like, hey, you need to let me do this or else I'm going to turn you in. And she's like, well, you could die tomorrow. Like, I mean, that was where I'm like callous. Like she raised this girl, but she's like, if you threaten my livelihood, I will take you out without a second thought, because that is what is necessary. And that is just such an interesting take to watch happen on the page. And a great start to this. The Empress is just, there's nothing to know about her yet, other than like, she's Viperous. She can seduce people with her looks.
I think she's the one that we're now believing is the true big bad after the ending.
Yeah. And
we've all been deceived into thinking that she was good, but
she was going to help them, but she was not. Yeah. I mean, she's the Empress. She's there. We'll see.
We'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of leaves us with Neja, Rin, and Alton.
The three I've been trying to get you to talk about, and you're like,
I kind of wanted to leave them to the end.
No. I think you're right. I think I kept like stumbling ahead, but you kept us centered. I don't think you were right. I promise. But yeah, I want to do, if it's okay with you, Neja, Rin, Alton.
Sure.
Yeah. So let's start with Neja. Fuck Neja.
Neja is so frustrating to me. I am not a super huge fan of the trope where it's like, he's mean to me and then we become lovers. I'm not a big fan of that trope, honestly, because it's just, I think I prefer friends to lovers as a trope, because it seems more natural and like it could happen. And this situation especially is grating to me because he literally is physically harmful to her.
Yeah. So
it goes beyond just making fun of her teacher and where she comes from, which in itself is terrible. But when he starts to become physically harmful is where I'm like, okay, you cannot now just turn this around and be like, but we have so much in common and we love each other. No, stop.
I am not a friends to lover person because I am someone who is like, if one of you is pining, you guys should have just been together or it's just not going to work. I don't care.
To me, it just seems like a more natural transition than somebody who literally hates you.
Fair. I am a Grumpy Sunshine person, and Grumpy Sunshine is technically, he is in love with her. He's just really bad at showing it.
That is fine. The enemies to lovers thing, I'm just not
I don't
on board
get
with.
enemies to lover. I think a lot of books get misconstrued as enemies to lover because like Beach Read, people are like enemies to lovers. I'm like, it's literally just Grumpy Sunshine. It's not enemies to lovers. Like one side does hate the other person at the beginning, but it's not like a evilness. It's just like he's so pretentious.
Sure.
And that is also my brand because I am a huge Pride and Prejudice head. So full circle. But the enemies to lovers in this sense like falls so flat for me because he
he's so bad.
is dangerous. Like he is mutilating people and like he doesn't need to be. Like that's kind of the biggest thing where it's like it's not like he came from rags where he's like, if I don't fight like this every single day, I will get kicked out. It's like he is in a position of power. He is a classroom favorite and he just does this to like prove a point. He's dangerous. Like he wants to hurt Rin, and it's because she quote unquote punched him in the face at the beginning. Like he deserved it. He was putting her down and she ended the fight. Like that's all it was. It's not like any type of like, well, I just didn't know what to expect from you.
And so honestly, the way that he reacts to her, she reacts to him in retaliation for what he is saying. And then he goes hardcore against her, and it just doesn't fit the situation because it's like, look, you started this by being an a-hole, so stop.
And it doesn't make sense. It makes me so frustrated. And like a lot of his stuff later on that's supposed to like make us okay with him is rooted in racism. Like, it's like, I just didn't know how to expect to deal with you. I just thought you seemed so mysterious and I was afraid. That's just racism. I'm sorry. Like there's nothing to it. Like he's racist because of the color of her skin, because of who she is, where she came from.
Right.
I don't understand like why xenophobia is like a sexual turn on to Rin. Like it just doesn't make sense to me. He hasn't unlearned enough through war.
The other thing is it's so jarring for them to end off part one and they're still kind of enemies because you don't really see them interact much after the trials.
Yeah.
And then the next time that they interact, they're at war and they're fighting together and they feel this connection with each other and they're suddenly friends who are like, oh, we've gotten over everything and there's a deeper connection here. And it's like, no,
it just doesn't make sense. I didn't think he did enough unlearning to warrant this. And like it's
hard to get on board with this.
I said it off screen, but I said this is where I felt Kuang's age the most. Like she was very young in her understanding of love and romance through the Neja Rin situation.
Sure.
Because I think it's easy when you're younger to be like, oh, but he's changed. And it's like, no, he hasn't. He didn't. He did nothing. War happened and he realized you were a person. And that's the bare minimum someone can do. If the bare minimum,
he's like, we're not going to kill each other
because we're on the same side now. That's not enough, honey. Like, there's so many red flags. The t-shirt is red.
She's actually kind of powerful, so I guess I won't.
I guess
kill her.
I guess like once I really met you, I realized you weren't so bad, and like maybe the problem was me. I guess, but I
like,
also
once I thought about it, I was like, she's actually more powerful than me, so maybe I should be nice.
Oh, but I deserve an apology too because you used to strike out at me with violence when I was being openly racist towards you. Like, what was up with that? Like, it makes no sense. I don't like Neja. It's unearned.
It's very difficult to understand.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think that's maybe another reason that I was kind of like, did you think that something was going to happen with Katai? Because maybe that was just me hoping that something with Neja was not going to happen, because you can feel that happening and you're like, no.
I was honestly just okay with no romance happening.
So it would have been fine. No romance. I think it's when I just started feeling the Neja thing that I was like, maybe bring in Katai.
There's like
offer her an option.
There is a huge TikTok trend going around, and like being like, he's a 10, but, and then it's a huge red flag. Yeah. And it's like, he's a 10, but he's openly racist towards you and thinks you should die. Like,
yeah.
What do you rate him now? Negative 10 million. I don't know.
Yeah. No rating.
No rating. He's terrible. And I do think it's like, Rin, is he actually changing, or do you just want to bang a hot guy to prove you can bang a hot guy? Because,
here's like, the other thing too. Like, I don't think within the terms of this book that having a character like Neja is a bad thing. No. I think that there is value to having a Neja character. Do I think there is value to making Neja's character the love interest? I don't know. I'm worried.
I don't think so. I don't think there's a good thing to making him the love interest.
Best way to go with that.
And this is where I'm like, I can't wait for people to read Babel. I think sometimes the romances or like the romantic issues in that book are so much better. And like
far more nuanced,
where like this one is so straightforward, where it's like, well, she likes him. And it's just like, that's not a good enough reason, Rin. Like,
and it's almost, you mentioned how he looked beautiful, so I can overlook all these other things. And it's like, no, you should not be overlooking all of these nasty, horrible things that he has done and said just because he's a beautiful person. Like, that's never okay.
And that is how it feels. It feels like Rin has some like unlearning to do when it comes to like what she wants in a man, which like she is 16. I think that should be said. Like, she is a young girl. And when you are 16, sometimes you do want to date the hot guy who is incredibly problematic. Like, your hormones are raging. Sure. You probably want the cute boy. Like, it's more important when you're younger to date someone like aesthetically pleasing than when you get older and you're like, I actually want partnership and like certain, like, I am attracted to many things, not just hotness. And I think like we can get this into the Rin character portion, but like Rin is a character who probably does subscribe to like, it's one of those things where it's like, people talk about this in like specific communities where it's like sometimes you have to unlearn your own inherent like sexism or racism. And I do think that like Rin probably has some own internalized racism for how she is treated. And when that happens to you, sometimes you do want the person who quote unquote fits in the most to prove that you are worthy of love and respect. And you need that outward validation instead of inward validation.
Completely agree.
So I don't think it doesn't make sense to have this happen. I think you and I being frustrated with it makes sense because we are 30-year-old women reading about 16-year-olds being like, Rin, no, this is a red flag and it's never going to end well. And he has not done enough to change. But I can understand that a 16-year-old can probably have this flip of a switch. It's just frustrating.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So I think both things can be true. And we're going hard, but we're going hard because like we see all the red flags and we're like, no, you need to stop. He has not done enough. He still has probably a lot of inherent racism. And if you guys were not at war, he would not have been forced to do this unlearning. Yeah. And is that enough to keep it going after the war is over? And my guess is the answer is no.
No, probably not.
So with that,
let's talk about Rin.
Okay. I mean,
we've talked about her a lot throughout, but any big takeaways?
Well, I want to talk about a little bit because Veronica brought it up. She was texting me, and I think it is important to note, like, Rin's self-harm in this book.
Oh yeah.
Because
as like, a form of motivation.
I also would like to point out she was very young when she started self-harming.
Yes.
And I often think that self-harming usually starts at a younger age. So it is interesting to choose to do that with like this young character. And it shows like her desperation, but it also shows a certain amount of like disrespect for her body because like, as I was saying, like the internalized racism, internalized like hatred, I think sometimes self-mutilation can kind of be wound up into that, even if she's like, well, I'm doing this because I have to study, I have to win. It is a like, I will
she sees her body as a tool because it's not worth anything to her. It's been taught to her that her body is not worth as much.
And I think she treats her body in that way, which also makes sense when we look into it. Like you and I discussed this last week, and Kuang's reaction to it, where it's like her deciding to like not be able to have children is not the feminist move that everyone thinks it is. It shows that Rin does not value her body as much as others. And like, she doesn't have the luxury to do that, unfortunately. But she also has like a certain like internalized hatred of herself a lot that you can kind of pick up throughout this novel of like, she wishes she were different. She wishes like, and she is a young girl going through all of this trauma. So like, that makes sense from a young girl's reaction. And I think that like, I think it would be very easy to read Rin and be like, oh, she's such a complex character. But also I read her and I'm like, she's a 16-year-old. Like, I just feel bad that a 16-year-old has to go through all of this and has to go through self-mutilation, where like, she is told to make herself uglier to survive. Like, if you even think about it, like one of her favorite things about her is her hair, and she gets rid of it within the first like 100 pages because it can be used. Like,
don't have long hair because it'll be used to pull you into alleys and allow people to assault you.
Yes. And it is very much like Rin has to make herself into this like hollowed out husk of a person who doesn't get to appreciate her own personhood. And
in order to survive. And
in order to survive. And I think
not necessarily thrive, but
not thrive. Yeah. But to survive. And I think when you like realize all of these things on the page, it makes sense that she is willing to destroy other people because she has invalidated her own humanity so much that it is very easy to invalidate other people's humanity, because when your life hasn't been respected, why should you respect anyone else's?
Why would you feel that connection to other people when you haven't felt that at all?
Especially when those people have like made your people suffer, and you like only and tore you from your own home, where you don't get to be connected to those people anymore in any way other than like this religion that you're taught about. And it makes sense that she would like go hard into this, being like, I just want something. I just want this connectedness. And like, I just think Rin is a very divisive character, but I think she makes sense. Like all of
I agree
this
with that.
Makes sense. But
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, good call.
But that's just, she's so interesting. She makes a lot of like,
I don't think there's any moment in time when you can say something she did was wrong or right. I don't, and I mean, obviously you can be like, oh yeah, it was the right decision to go to synagogue or whatever. I don't know. And maybe you can't even there. But I think she's definitely an interesting character who weighs her decisions in such a way that she's always moving towards a place of survival.
Yes.
For herself primarily.
I agree. And like, her desperation makes her like a very good soldier, because she like, if all you want to do is to survive, you will do anything to survive. And it's really fascinating to read about her. I think she's a character that I haven't read very often as like a protagonist. Like a lot of times I was thinking about it, like, yes, she is a character that everyone tells is special. Like, yes, she's doing this, but like, she is kind of the person who is not as centered. And I think a lot of times, usually you have the most centered character being like, well, I don't know, but I don't know. And then you have like their best friend character being like, we're going to do something wild, and I had to do this. And it's very interesting to see a different take on that, where like Rin is the character doing the wild things and coming back to it, and people being like, what did you just do? And she was like, but I've been struggling, and I made this choice, and I've made the active choice. And she's at least like, whereas Jiang and like Shagun and even Katai in his own way, they like aren't as active, and they're doing that because they can't do certain things. And she's like, okay, but you guys are still making a choice not to be active. And I'm at least owning up to my choice, and I'm going to be active in this moment and take on the guilt and take on the like horribleness. And like, that's a very interesting character to read about.
I also think it's interesting too, that Rin's never allowed to sit with anything for any amount of time. Everything that she does has to be a snap decision.
Yeah.
You have to decide now. You have to do this now. You need to make up your mind if you're going. You need to decide if you're going to stay at synagogue. You need to decide if you're going to do this path. She never has any time to kind of sit with any kind of decisions that she has to make, or give herself any time to learn about things. She has to learn things literally rapid fire.
Yeah.
And that is a really difficult way to learn in an educational setting, and also in a world setting, because literally her whole life has kind of been at a war pace where she is not allowed the time to grow and learn that other people have been.
Yep. I think you're right. And there's just something about Rin that's so fascinating to me. And it's just like, she has such a sense of loss of like, she doesn't feel a connection to her people until the very end, when she gets this beautiful moment of like finding out there was joy that she was robbed of through war. And she just never gets a moment. Like, so many people, like Venka comes in, and Venka is just like, Venka's struggled through so much that like Rin has to take it on, because like, obviously Venka isn't in a position at that moment to like have any sort of thought, but it's like, you need to go, you need to kill people. And like Rin takes that to heart, and she takes like losing.
I think she definitely takes on the responsibility, or not responsibility, but
takes on the weight.
Yeah, takes on the weight of other people's problems and their wants and needs, and tries to not only make them her own, but to avenge these people. And right or wrong, it shapes who she is becoming.
Well, and I think it all goes back to like, you and I talked about this, where it's like, a lot of people wish they were the Shogun or like Jijang, but a lot more people are the Alton and the Rins of the world who are going to go after the vengeance and going to make a hot-headed momentary decision that like erupts
people don't take a moment to step back all the time and think about things, or think about things backwards like Shogun does. They often are quick to have a reaction like Rin and be like, I'm doing it.
And I think sometimes that's hard to read about in a book, because like we don't love that side of ourselves. Like, we wish we were the people. And I also think like Rin is very human, and like she is a hypocrite. Like, there are so many times where she's done bad things, and then someone else does something, and it's like, really? And like, she does that with Kara at the end, where she's like, where Rin like erupted a mountain and killed like so many people, a whole island of people, and like felt the children's lives she was choosing to kill, and like went in kind of eyes open, like, yes, she only had a moment to decide, but she did know what was going to happen. She knew
what was going to have to happen.
And like Kara and like Shogun got to like have a little bit of removal of themselves, where they're like, we're just doing this, and then what happens. And she's still like, I can't believe you guys did that. Did you guys not even try to save people? And like, Kara has to be like, did you you can't come to me with this and like put your own guilt on me, because like I'm dealing with it myself. You don't have to make sure. And I think that that's also really human, where like, we all make the same mistakes, but someone has to be like, but did you learn from it? Did you learn? And it's like, that's none of your business, Rin. Like, they made a choice. You made a choice. You just have to respect someone's choice and move on.
Right.
But I think Rin's biggest issue right now is that she has a penchant for fuckboys. So,
I mean, Rin's got some bigger issues.
No, I know
at the moment, but that's probably a glaring one to us in the moment. Hopefully, it doesn't become an issue, that she's able to focus more on her actual issues. But
well, and she is really changeable. Like, Rin is easily moved from position to position. And I also think that that's like, she is young. She's 16. But I think that that's setting up.
I thought that was relatable, though, because being able to, fall into the idea set of a teacher and think that the world just rises and sets with Master Urja, and then kind of thinking, you know what, Jiang makes a lot of good points. I think that I could get on board with things that he's saying, and then being extremely attached to Alton. And I think all of that is so relatable, because as a teenager myself, I was often finding myself connected to different teachers or figures in my life that I was close to, and hearing their ideas or the things that they had learned, or wanted to share, and being like, well, so-and-so said this, and then someone else presenting a different idea set and being like, oh, well, I guess I could get on board with that. And then kind of meshing yourself into the person that you become. It's easy as a 16-year-old though, to be malleable like that.
Yeah. I think something about Rin that is like, I find super fascinating is we feel how young she is on the page. And a lot of times I feel like older authors fail to do that well. But like, for some reason, there's something about Rin where it's like, yeah, this is obviously a 16-year-old girl to us. Like,
well, the author herself was very young.
Yes. And I think that helps.
I mean, yeah, I think that that's probably what the main reason for that is. But Kuang is obviously a very mature person and able to handle really difficult topics. She will have a very prolific career. I have no doubt. But
I mean, she already does.
I think that it's really a lot easier to relate to someone who is 25 or 26 writing it, which I think she's 25 or 26 now.
She's 26 now. Yeah. She was like 19 or 20 when she wrote The Poppy Wars.
Sure. So yeah, old. But yeah, I think it's a lot easier probably to relate to a character written, a 16-year-old written by a 19-year-old than it is to relate to a young woman character written by an old man, right. Because there is a lot of, you, like you said, you as an author, you do a lot of self-insertion into characters, and this obviously has helped her to shape some of these young characters.
Right. I agree. Okay. Do you have anything left on Rin?
I don't.
All right, let's get to one of our favorite characters. We're sandwiching in the two favorites. Alton, what did you think about Alton?
I really loved Alton as a character. Me too. And honestly, it was like right from the beginning when they started describing him at Synecard and like all the things about him, I was like, I'm gonna love this character. Mm-hmm. And I just did. It was so hard for me to hear about the trauma and things that he had went through later on in the book, and when he had to go into that terrible lab again. Mm-hmm. You feel just disgusted.
Yeah.
And I think for me there was a lot of forgiveness for things that Alton did or said, because I felt so much for this character that I was willing to forgive him and let him do things that were probably not okay.
Well, I think a huge thing with Alton is he's been dehumanized by every single group of people in this story, that you recognize he is one of the most like humane, or at least his humanity feels the most on the page, because we know how much he's been dehumanized and how much of a shell of a person he's become because of that. And
for sure,
he keeps getting pushed into these situations where he walks in like head first. Like he's been through so much trauma and he's been built to be this great person. And like, he immediately leaves and becomes the general of a group of people and responsible for all these people around him.
And like the other generals are constantly trying to throw him under the bus and give him more responsibility and make him take on things that are way above his experience level, just to see if maybe he'll fail. And also just his upbringing being considered like the last Spearley, and having all these people just praise him for every single thing that he done, that he did everything perfect, and that they continue to just feed him drugs essentially to get him to perform at this high level, and then praised him for it.
It's just heartbreaking. And like, he's a kid, like he is not, he's just a kid. And I think it's so horrifying to like know that he's been through all this stuff. When he gets like brought back to the laboratory and he's sitting there like having a breakdown, it's like, of course he has. Right. Like, this is horrifying. And then to find out that like all the people
Mm-hmm.
you thought you could trust throughout this book were just like feeding him opium. And then you found out like Jiang wouldn't help him because there's too much anger in him. And it's like, Jiang,
Right.
you know what was happening to him. How did no
You
one
can't
intervene
sympathize
for
with his
this
situation?
child? Yeah, like of course he's angry. Of course he's all of these things. Like
couldn't he use a little guidance?
Right. And like Alton wanted to be guided by Jiang. Like he and like this is something I think about all the time, where like the whole sentiment that like children want parents, children want boundaries, children want to know, because like there is a certain like form of love to that, where it's like you're taking care of me. Like Jiang could have taken care of Alton and he just didn't. And like no one took care of Alton. And maybe that's what he wanted all along. And instead he just gets pushed into this role of like leader, where it's like, only you can do this. Only you can act like this. Only spiritually. And like also to be treated that way, where it's like, you were so dehumanized, where it's like, of course you're this good. You were built for it. You were bred for it. It's just gross because like, that's not true. Like you can have like an affinity for something, but like you weren't born and bred to be a like heartless soldier. And that's how they treated him. And so when he has this anger, when he wants to like kill everyone, it's like, of course he does. He has
makes sense. It makes total sense.
You can't treat someone like that and then expect them to understand humanity or respect it as much, because like all he knows is disrespect. And he just felt like the most heartbreaking character. And then like, I was so frustrated with Kuang a little bit with him, because like at the end, his final thing is like, Rin, you're so much stronger than me. And you're like, I'm pretty sure there's no one stronger than Alton in all of this.
I also felt that way too, where I was like, if anything, Alton is the strongest character of any of them.
And I mean, like it's understandable that he thinks Rin is stronger than him, because she is
from his standpoint.
From his standpoint,
he's like, you're able to let these things go. You know, you're able to not be easily taken by opium and stuff like that, where I feel like I'm weak because I need it, and I feel like I'm not as strong because I have all these things that have happened to me, and they wouldn't have happened to me if I was stronger. And it's just heartbreaking, because it's like, you're so strong because you've been able to go through these things.
Well, and I feel like even at the end, like Rin kind of comes to terms with like his opium addiction, because she kind of needs it for an escape at that point, where she's like, oh, he has so much in his head that rages that like he just wanted a moment of silence. And I was like, again, I think I've said this, but like as someone who struggles with a drinking issue, it's not about like the drinking. It's about like wanting to quiet your outside life for a little while. And like, that is very accurate and very good of Kuang to recognize that that's like how some people's addictions work. I do not speak for everyone, but like specifically for Alton, that was the way his addiction to opium worked, where it was like, and like he was pumped full of it by everyone. So like he didn't ever have an option to not be addicted to this. And then like it became this thing that he was connected to like finally quiet all the pressures of life. That's so human and so heartbreaking to like read about. I feel like you and I both felt so much love for all.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, he did.
And there's also just this goodness that still pours out through this character, even though I think you said earlier that you feel like he's kind of desensitized or dehumanized at points. There's just a goodness that comes through when he still sees the goodness in Phelan and wants to help Phelan get out of the Chulukery. There's this part of him that thinks that he can help Suni from being lost to his god. He thinks that he's able to help all these people. He can do all these good things. I can bring us back. I can win this war. I can make things okay. And it's too much to put on one person's shoulders, but he thinks he can do it.
Well, that is like something when you're treated with like a lot of respect, you think it's because you can handle it, quote unquote. And like, that is a huge thing with Alton's character, where he thinks he can control everything and he can handle everything, because that is the way he has been treated his entire life. And like, when he finds out he can't, it is like the sudden shock to his system and like his like, and then he has to like relearn everything. And then he thinks like he has no purpose if he cannot control all the moving parts. And like his purpose must be to die for everyone else. And that's so heartbreaking because like it's not true. Like just because you can't control everything doesn't mean, you know, it's probably like, you know, a good story. Everyone just needs therapy, but like Alton needs the most therapy to learn that like this isn't all you have to offer. But because of this, like because he's been taught he is the best, because he's been taught he's a soldier, because there is a certain like naivete about him where like he thinks he can control everything. He thinks he can do this, but he has lived like a very sheltered life, unfortunately, like outside of his trauma. He has like dealt with the most trauma, but he has only lived like a very specific portion of his life that like, I'm sure if he had continued in this story, we would have seen like some complicated things about like his relationship with Shagun. Like they have a romantic relationship. Are either of them capable of like being equal participants in this? Because it's like Alton can't handle very much. He is someone going through addiction. He is someone going through like the pressures of stuff. Like, and Shagun is a lot more centered. So was he relying too much on him, or like,
what are the depths of their romantic relationship? Is it more one-sided, or
because I think it would be very easy to claim that like, oh, well, Alton's like this overpowering figure. But even like you and I pointed out, Rin has a huge blind spot when it comes to him, where like Shagun has to be like, he's struggling. How do you not see that? He doesn't know what he's doing. He's doing his best. And she's like, oh, I guess I just saw him as this like pillar of everything. And so it shocked me when I found out he was a human. And like,
and I think that's the way that he's introduced to most people. It's not until he gets into the psych and they are able to really see him for what he is and understand him more.
But even like, I'm interested to see how the psych, because like we see parts of it where they're like, we understand why he's addicted to opium. We understand this. But if you think about it, like everyone always wants something from Alton. Like Rin wants him to teach her about the spiralies. She wants, and like,
she needs that guidance because she was kind of thrown into this last and has the least experience, and she doesn't know how to really control her own power. So she needs that. The other members of the psych need guidance themselves because they're struggling and have very little guidance, even though they've received some training. There's also the warlords that are constantly after him and want him to do this and this and this. Shagun is being sent on all these different missions to find information and get guidance from the gods.
And it's a little fucked up that like Shagun is his one bastion of like, he's more prepared than I am. He is this thing. And then they get into a romantic entanglement. So then Shagun wants something from him as well. Like there's no one that Alton can just like let himself rely on. And so like, he is a tragic figure in this book because this is all he thought he brought to the table. And that is incredibly sad.
Yeah.
Well, with that bummer.
I mean, it's still a beautiful character though.
Yes.
I feel like I said, when I fell in love with this character, I really fell in love with this character because I think it's mostly because there's that goodness despite all the bad that has happened to him.
Yeah, I agree.
So we don't have to necessarily leave off on a bad note because there is this inherent goodness to Alton.
Well, and we loved Alton so much because he brought all these things to the table and because like he is such a great, he's a great character in this book.
A great leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it really like it shows like he is a powerful leader. He is a good leader. He's a strong leader.
He inherently cares about people.
And he like, anytime he messes up, you understand why. And there's just such like, even if everyone else has dehumanized him besides the psych, like his humanity really shone through.
Sure.
Okay. Well, I think that you and I have had a very in-depth discussion today.
Yeah. Is there anything else we need to talk about with the book, or?
I think we've really, this was an amazing discussion. Like, I think you and I, this is one of our best character dissections we've done in a very long time.
We are excellent.
We may have to start covering a character or two on a wrap-up episode because there's just so much to get into with these characters. This is not like Wheel of Time where it's like, I'm sick of talking about this person. Let's move on.
Yeah. And you have a lot more time to talk about them there.
Yes. So guys, like reach out to us. Do you agree with our takes on these characters? Do you have anything to add that you think we missed? Please reach out.
Yeah, friends, shout us out. Let us know what you think. Ask us questions.
Tag us on Twitter or comment on our post about this on Instagram at OWWR That's our pod. You can also go to our blog to read all the things I'm doing there at ourpod.com or email us at ourpod@gmail.com. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Rating, reviewing, and subscribing is a great way to get people into the conversation. And as we are going through season 2, it's a great way to get people into a different conversation than we were having before. So this is now a great time to drop that and let people know what you think of us covering season 2 of the Poppy Wars. And join us next week as we cover the first. Are we
going to break this into parts again like we did before?
The first part of the next book in this,
The Dragon Republic.
So we will be covering part 1 and join us then. Bye.
Bye.